this recipe is probably one of the most difficult recipes I've made on my channel. And this is after a year. I'm almost every day making one recipe, and you will know it's really challenging. So what am I making today is this pudding man. So it's a steamed bun with caramel custard pudding filling. And on the 20th of January, in Japan, there's one supermarket called the Mini Stop, and they released a series of steamed buns with various very interesting fillings. And the first one is this pudding man. So it's steamed dumpling, the traditional Chinese steamed dumplings, although many people in other countries love it as well. And filled with French pudding, caramel pudding, or Japanese say they have their own version as well. But anyway, this tremendous, difficult dessert, or you can also have it as a full meal. And it's released in Japan. Then I saw some YouTubers in Japan actually bought them and made testing videos on these special steamed buns. So I thought I have to make a video on that as well. And here I'm making it for almost a whole day from 10 o'clock in the morning. I had to make the pudding first, and then also the dough of the steamed bun needs to rest twice, and it's a way how you can make the buns really fluffy. It came out nicely, and I also had some puddings by themselves, and hopefully you enjoy this recipe. For the pudding filling, I'm going to use a recipe from this cookbook, and here is the one, French caramel custard. We will need half cup of sugar, a quarter cup of water. Turn our stove on to low heat. Mix it well. So until our sugar is completely dissolved in the water, we can turn our stove on high. Now we cannot use the spatula to stir our syrup anymore. We can do is to shake our pot occasionally. Now we can use the mold we prepared earlier. These we're going to fill with our caramel later. So we prepare a bowl of water. Once our caramel is ready, we're going to put our pot into this bowl of water to cool it down. We want to have a darker brown color, but have to be careful because it will burn really quickly. Now we can just put it in water to stop it cooking. We're going to pour this syrup caramel into our mold. Now we could just put a bit of water back into this pot and we cook it on low heat. Then we can clean our pot really easily. Now we can just cool our caramel in the mold, and we're going to make the pudding. For our custard, we're going to need 2 cups of milk, 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract, 2/3 cups of sugar, 2 whole eggs, and 4 egg yolks. Adding our milk, vanilla extract, now we can turn our stove on to medium-low heat, and we're going to bring our milk to boil. Once our milk starts boiling, we can turn our heat off. We're going to let our milk cool. Now we can crack our eggs. 4 egg yolks. Mix well with 2/3 cups of sugar. We can slowly add in our hot milk. Just mix it in. We want to do this slowly because we don't want to make our mixture frothy. Now we can sift through our pudding mixture through a strainer. This will make our pudding very tender. Now we can fill in the pudding mixture into our mold. So here I filled all my mold. You can probably see I didn't fill it full. Adding all our caramel custard into a container. Now we're going to pour hot water to about 2/3 of the depth of the mold. Turn our oven on to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit. Now we are going to cook our custard for about 40 to 50 minutes. The water should stay at a bare simmer. If it's becoming boil or hot simmer, we should turn the oven a bit lower. For our steamed buns, we're going to need 110 grams of steamed pumpkins, 220 grams of all-purpose flour, 20 grams of sugar, 2.5 grams of dry yeast, 1 egg, a pinch of salt. We're also going to need some water. It's usually the half of the quantity of your flour, but it depends on what kind of flour you're using. And in this recipe, we're also adding a bit of steamed pumpkin. It also contains some water, so we're just going to add a little bit of water at a time. You could also use milk to replace water. The quantity will be a bit more than half the quantity of your flour. Baking powder and vegetable oil, or you can also use butter. These two are both optional. They will make your dough a lot fluffier. You can add in 1 teaspoon of baking powder or 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil or butter. Here we have our yeast. We're just going to add a bit of milk, a bit of sugar. We're going to let it sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. So activate our yeast, dry yeast in the milk. Now we can add in all our ingredients into the flour. Our pumpkins, sugar, a pinch of salt, 1 egg, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil, or you can also add in butter. Our yeast. Now we can try to combine everything together. So I decided to use milk instead of water to give it a more creamy taste. And once all our dry ingredients is cooperated, we can slowly add in our milk while kneading the dough together. So once we have our dough, we can transfer it to the working surface. If it's too sticky, can always put a bit of flour at the bottom And we're going to knead this for at least 10 minutes. So we want to have a smooth dough for the steamed buns. So once our dough is smooth, we can put it back to the bowl, and we're going to rest this cover it with the foil. And we have to wait until the dough is double or triple in size. It can take a bit longer in winter and a bit shorter in summer. Now after about 1.5 hours, when it's cold, probably take 2 hours, and you can see the dough grow about 3 times bigger. And we're going to take it out and going to knead it. And you can see here it has lots of holes in there. We don't want that, so we're just going to knead it to get all the air out of our dough. So we just need to knead this for about 5 minutes until our dough is smooth. If your dough is very soft, then you can add a bit flour in on your hands. But here our dough is perfect. I'm just going to knead this. After kneading, we just put our dough back into the bowl, and we're going to let it rest for the second time. And this time we just need to wait until it's double in size. Now after second time of resting, you can see how big our dough is now. Now we can take it out, and we're going to knead it again. Now this time we're going to knead it to a long stick. We can cut it in the middle, so we have a 2 equal size. It's just easier for us to work with. Now we're going to separate our dough to smaller pieces, about 45 grams each. So we're going to cover those dough under a foil to prevent it from drying. You can also use a towel. Now we can roll each our dough to a small ball. Now we can let it rest again for about 10 minutes. So you could do this one by one. Once you finish all your doughs, then the first one should be already rested for 10 minutes. Now we have all our doughs kneaded. We're just going to rest them. And now we take a bit of flour on our working surface. This is very important. It will help when we are making the buns, to help it stick together, to close the opening. Now we just use a roller to roll our dough open. If you could roll the sides thinner and the middle a bit thicker, would be nice. So you will have a nice finish later. So once you've done that, you could always just roll it over to make it flatter and a bit rounder shape, so look a bit nicer. So here is one of our caramel pudding, and we can use a toothpick and just go around the edges to make it open. So once you cut it around the edges, you could already see the caramel. Now we can pour our caramel pudding on top. You can see it has the caramel sauce with it, if you could. And now we're going to seal it. And this is important if you have a bit of flour on your hands, so it will close nicely. All you want to do is to close it. You want to keep a bit distance from the caramel sauce, because the sauce would break the opening and make it soggy, and then you can't really close it anymore. Okay, so we just want to close everything together to make sure it's not opened. Now we have our steam buns here. You can, once you close this properly, you can turn it. Then we're going to let it rest for about 10 to 15 minutes. And in the meanwhile, we can make the rest of other buns. So we'll do the same. A bit flour on both sides, and we're going to roll our dough. While our buns are resting, we can make a topping. So we will need some cocoa powder. And we're going to mix in about 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder into our dough to make it dark. Now we just roll our dough thin. And you can see because of the cocoa powder, it turns brown. And now we're going to use a cookie cutter to cut roughly the shape for the topping. So we will need 6 equal size of the brown dough to make enough topping for our pudding buns. So we have here one of our finished bun. I'm just going to brush a bit of egg white. You can also use water. It's just used to kind of glue our topping onto the top of our buns. So you can also stretch it a little bit so it would cover the top of our bun. So here is one of our finished pudding buns, and you can see it has a dark brown topping with a yellow bottom, the body. So it does look like a caramel pudding if you have a really good imagination. And I'm going to continue to finish the rest of 5 of our pudding buns. So here are 3 of my finished pudding buns, and I just put it on a steamer, and here is I'm using my rice cooker to steam them. Silicone sheet, and this will prevent our buns from sticking while steaming. I'm going to put them, because they are already rested while I'm making them, I'm just going to put them on the cold water until you could see the steam. You're going to keep steaming them for about 15 minutes, and after that you can turn off the heat and let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then they are done. So here is my pudding man, or if that's how they call it in Japanese. And my pudding, my caramel pudding, my caramel, how do you call it? A caramel pudding. And after hours of hard working, I have to give this a try. And it came not a lot bigger as how I imagined, because when I made it, it's really super small. But after steaming and resting, here it is. It's twice as big as how it was before. And you probably have seen some YouTube videos. YouTubers bought these from the Japanese supermarket mini stop, and it's really small. I would say maybe 2/3 of this size. Anyway, my homemade pudding steam buns. So let's give it a try. I'm going to give it a big bite. So guten Appetit. My buns is more than the filling because I was trying to close it and made a bit more here, but you still can see the filling. So here is my buns, the pudding filling, the caramel sauce. I have to say it's really filling. It's actually a really good idea, but it's really hard to make at home. So I'm actually really happy, super happy that I could do this myself. Okay. So please give this a try at home if you have time. Pudding is really easy, a classic French pudding. And the buns is really easy, a classic Chinese steamed buns. And combine them together, it is Purin Man, the steamed pudding buns. And hopefully you like this recipe. Please give me a thumbs up and leave your comments below. If you want to see more videos like this one, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And thanks for watching. Did you subscribe yet? If not, click here. Click here, click here. Every day, watch new videos at 6 p.m. Here are my recommended videos. Thanks for watching. 谢谢大家。